Yeah, the funny thing was, I mean, I was in these halls at AUT 20 years ago, literally, and back then being an entrepreneur actually wasn't that cool. Like, I'm not kidding, it wasn't the cool thing to do. There was no Mark Zuckerberg around back then. And I didn't think about being an entrepreneur. I thought I'd end up in advertising, which I did, which I loved. But I kind of became an accidental entrepreneur when about 6 years ago I discovered social media for my husband's business. And as a marketer, I got so excited by the theory of being able to have customers that would talk back to me in real time, and I could literally change the way my business operated on a day-to-day level. And I was like, I need to go and do this. And there weren't any other social media agencies around, so I kind of accidentally started one. And then, you know, 6 years later, it's like one of the biggest in New Zealand, and we're doing all these amazing, cool things. So that worked out quite well, which was nice. I think a lot of entrepreneurs accidentally are. Like, if you look at Facebook, for example, he didn't set out to communicate with the world and have 5 billion people. He set out to impress a girl. Basically, he set up Facebook to get laid. And it kind of turned into a massive big success that it is right now. And I think we forget about that sometimes. Something starts as one thing and creates something else.
It's the act of making things happen. And I think that there is a huge difference between talking about things and doing things. And I think what entrepreneurs, and that's a pretty sort of broad word with lots of connotations, but I think that entrepreneurs at heart are about having an idea and actually turning that idea into reality, with all the sort of the ups and downs that are, you know, associated with doing that. I think it's something you absolutely learn by sort of constant sort of assessment of everything that's going on all the time. So you become better at it. And I think that there are, as you say, thousands of ideas, and it's really a matter of picking the ones that just seem to have a spark to them and a sort of a life of their own, if you like, that you can think, right, I could follow that idea somewhere really interesting. The analogy that someone mentioned to me years ago was, you know, you don't really have to create ideas. You've just got to be open to them, and you've got to have think of your mind as being an open window, and let these sort of ideas drift in, and know when to sort of pick one and do something with it. You know, so you'll hit a wall and you'll fall over, and you've got to stand up and go at it again and go at it again. And I think there is no substitute. Just for hard work and utter determination to succeed. That should never be it. You should never draw a line under it and say, right, I've tried that sort of, you know, new business stuff. I'm not doing that ever again. You've just got to keep looking. I think big enough is when you run out of steam. You know, and the trick is not to run out of steam. I think the trick to not running out of steam is to make every day enjoyable. You know, to do something. I'm a big believer in, at the end of the day, you should have improved something. You know, something should be better than it was at the start of the day. And it can't, you know, you've probably heard me over the years, but it can be as simple as making sure that light bulb gets fixed. But, you know, it can be as significant as, you know, a new contract or a new product or a new whatever. But it's just, I think you just keep going. And critically, one of the great things about the sort of, you know, entrepreneur thing is you sort of get to do what you want to do, and you get to do it the way you want to do it, and that is enormously good fun. So it's the big difference between really doing something sort of fast and nimble and exciting versus being part of a corporate.
Entrepreneurs have got to have that extra bit of drive, and they've got to think outside the square, and they've got to believe in it and visualise it, and then be able to go for it. One thing they're not going to want to see is an inventor. So if you are a true inventor, you do a lot of things, don't you? And you guard your product, you guard your initiative, and you don't give it up. So an investor is going to want to see someone that respects them. They will understand what you've got to offer. They'll want to understand your invention. But they'll want to separate you from the inventors who are greedy and the inventors who are prepared to share, and that means sharing with them to invest and make something good. You can't change how the financial world thinks and behaves, all right? So they look at numbers and they expect numbers to be presented in a certain way, and they expected them to be explained in a certain way. You try to change those rules and you'll get shown the door. How you interrelate the financial message with what you're wanting to do with the business is just so important.
Indeed, I've changed direction in my life over and over again. I started off as a mountaineer. I actually started off as an artist, commercial artist, and then became a professional mountaineer, and then discovered that I could actually help kids through various things that I knew about, and went down that track of transforming young lives. At the end of the trip, I decided to do what I could to help other people. I borrowed a lot of money, set up a charitable trust, and the Hillary Outdoor Centres emerged. First day at work. Now, this is a huge entrepreneurial spirit, Bill Hall. First day at work, he said, "Now you're here, what do you want to do and how much do you want to be paid?" Like any good entrepreneur, he was lateral, but when he had to work in a focused manner, he did so, and so it was lateral focused. And he was very good at building a team around him because he selected people and then trusted them to get on with what they were there for. I think the most important thing at the outset is to have a goal, but not just a crazy goal, a goal that you understand and can identify the objectives. That's the most important thing. 17, I was a weak, skinny kid, and I set a goal of breaking a mountain running record by one of the best mountain runners in the world. And because I described the objectives to getting to the goal, I smashed the record to pieces. Well, the first thing is to have the dream and to know what you want to achieve. For example, when we set up what was called Project K, we did a whole lot of research, just desktop research about what was out there, what people were achieving, who the target was, and so on. And then we got to a point where we said, okay, there's a huge gap in that market with young people who have lost hope.
Well, here's an interesting story. I sat in an accelerator down in Wellington a few months ago, and this is an absolutely true story. The guy got up and he's like, "Right, let's start a business in 15 minutes." And we were like, "How are we going to do this?" And an American guy was come down here to sort of teach some of the approaches that these accelerators take in the States. And he said, "Right, what sort of business are we going to run?" And somebody said, "We're going to build an app to help fitness and weight loss." It's like, great idea. So what goes to a website and basically spends his first 5 minutes building the constructs of an app. 5 minutes, and he's got a beta version app. He's like, "Right, we're never going to get some investment in this business unless we've got some market validation." So he goes straight to another website in the States where you can basically pay to get your market validation done. And they have hundreds, thousands of people that tap into this network. Some do it to be paid, some do it because they just love to do it. And he basically went through the directory and, okay, here's our app that we're building, and it's on this particular area, health and wellness. Now we've got a list of all these people that have said, put their hand up to say, "I'm quite interested in providing validation for that particular sector." So then he sort of hones in on several other potential people that he wants to talk to, dials their number. Ring, ring, ring. Guy in Minneapolis picks up the phone and he says, doesn't say there's 100 people in the room sort of listening to the conversation, but goes through this process of validating. "Hey, look, tell me a bit more about yourself. We've got this idea. What do you think? What are you looking for?" And in that one phone call, We learned so much about what was going to be attractive to the market, maybe what wasn't going to be. That was completely free. So the tools are out there to do it. So yeah, I mean, in addition to NZTE, we mentioned can potentially help with distributors offshore. ATEED provide some great business tools and courses funded by the government, in a lot of cases 100% funded. Cullinane Innovation, who provide matching funding, often for research and development, project grants or growth grants to help New Zealand businesses that are focused on growing research and development. I guess one of the things I see a lot is, and it comes back to that, we've got a market in New Zealand that's, although it's a small market, it's a fantastic place to get that early validation. I've seen a lot of companies think, right, there's only 4 million people here, I'm going straight to the UK, or I'm going straight to the US or Asia. You're playing a big game up there, and you've got to have a lot of money. And yeah, I've seen a lot of companies get burnt there when they haven't come back and I guess properly measured what success means in their home market. But also, we've got Australia. Australia's 6 times the size of the market than us. They talk the same language, almost the same accent as us. It's geographically a lot easier to get to and cheaper in terms of travel costs. I see a lot of companies go straight to the States and ignore Australia rather than sort of building those blocks. So I guess sort of create more of a war chest to really attack those bigger markets.
Right, and I think in the old days, certainly when I was at AUT, like years ago, there was a very nice, safe structure. Oh, this is how you get ahead. Do this degree, then do that, then you get ahead that way. We're in a whole new game now, thank lucky young people, right, where actually everything is up for grabs. Entrepreneurs that I know probably don't like that term, or they didn't start out, I want to be an entrepreneur, right? That wouldn't be a drive, they wouldn't want to. I'm always suspicious of people like CEOs who want to be a CEO. It's like how invested are you in the title versus actually doing something amazing and leading a team of people into greatness. So when somebody says, I want to be an entrepreneur, I'm like, question mark, quite an egoic framework. What I do feel in terms of those who might accidentally wear this label saying entrepreneur, one of the things that will drive them, I believe, is a sense of wanting to be self-authored. You've got an idea to do it. And you know what, it mightn't work. Fine. But the most important thing is the doing it. You'll learn more by doing that great idea that you had. And halfway through you might think, oh God, this idea sucks. How do I actually make this idea better so it doesn't suck so much? I think I learned more about business in the 4 years, I think it was about 4 years in retail during the GFC. I drank a lot through those years too. But, it was like a white knuckle ride. But you learn so much more when it's so difficult.
Yeah, well, it's interesting pondering, this interview and thinking about being a paper boy and wondering if that's relevant to my sort of journey, if you like. And I think it is, because it taught me even as a young fella that, you've got to get up early, you've got to work hard. And if you want to make money or achieve certain things in life, goals, like for me it was a push bike. So the paper round was probably the start of self-discipline. And if you let a spoke break on a push bike, then the wheel collapses. And business is just the same. If you don't give love to all of those subjects, then the business becomes really vulnerable. And for me, I think it was, I just had a young family. I had a lot of aspirations personally to do well. And that drove me to be prepared to surround myself with people who could help me. And I think that was a kind of a big part of it, and still is that recognising that you can't get there on your own. You just simply can't. So you can, but if you take a great idea and if you believe in it and are prepared to work for it and prepared to put yourself on the line for it, then you can surround yourselves with people that'll help you. You've got to have those people or those support, around you, I think. Yeah, I think probably to monetize a business in terms of getting a return on the investment, in real terms, is probably 5 years. Possibly what makes an entrepreneur is that absolute determination to get there and recognise that they need help. And so perhaps an entrepreneur is not someone necessarily who has a great idea, but has the desire and passion and commitment to get it over the line, to still be pushing, that product and that idea 5 years' time or 10 years' time. The desire, like I did 30 odd years ago, to walk up and down every bank in the main street of Kerikeri and ask bank managers to support my crazy idea to have some cows and get them in calf and lease them out. And until I found, that guy, then it was just a dream.
And innovation really is the process of taking an idea and driving it through to a commercial outcome. It may be one where you build a business or a product or a market, but it's much more than creativity, and it's much more than an idea. So it's that whole process of taking an idea, first of all finding a problem that a customer has or an unmet need, creating a solution that fits that problem, identifying a market, building a business around it, building the channels and getting your product or service to market. So for me, innovation is really the commercialisation of creativity. Going forward will be imagination, because everything else, in the old days, 5,000 years ago, the biggest constraint was, the wheel and carts, and then the Industrial Revolution, it became your ability to access capital to build machinery, and then in the computer age, it was the processing power of the silicon chip. When you look at what we've got now with, ubiquitous connectivity, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, almost anything's possible when it comes down to what you can dream up and how you can deliver it. So I think we might be going into the century of the entrepreneur in many ways, because it's so much easier now for them to take their ideas, stand them up and just sort of explode them out there.
I think that the old methods of trying to teach people around things that were known or precise or have absolute answers are gone. I think the world's moving so fast that you've really got to be looking for new approaches and applying information more than trying to find absolute answers to things. And that, creativity is a way to navigate through an uncertain world and uncertain future.
There's something in the Kiwi DNA. Our forebears, whomever they are, originally got on a waka, then they got on a ship. A lot of them now have turned up on planes, but they've come here, and they've come here because they want to stake their life. And so there's this independence that seems to run through our culture, and I suspect our DNA. So we've got a lot of people who actually just, I suspect, don't want to be told what to do. They like the idea of running a business, and that's cool. The entrepreneur is a subgroup of that. That's the person with a real ambition who wants to change something, to really make something happen, to disrupt something, or to leave a mark on the world based on a purpose that drives them. Neither's actually right or wrong. It just depends on who you are and what drives you.
I always think of an entrepreneur as a free thinker. They're not going to be bound up by different people's thoughts. They always ask, why not? And look for a reason to be able to achieve something despite all the odds. And that's why it's often difficult for an entrepreneur to turn a successful idea into something that's going to work in practice, because the systems and the processes that they're dealing with to get finance are all bound up in something that's very rigid, and business plans and frameworks and cash flows and things. So the challenge, I think, for many entrepreneurs is to not destroy that free thinking and that question of why not. However, to do enough within the frameworks to make sure that they're creating the right foundations for their business to be successful. So there's two programs that I'm directly connected to, and one is the Entrepreneurial Winning Woman program, which is something EY runs globally. And what that does is we get together some of the successful female entrepreneurs throughout New Zealand, and they get to spend 2 days with them exploring ideas. where their businesses are at. Now there we're not targeting start-up businesses, we're targeting businesses that have been going for a while, got to the $1 million turnover and have stagnated. So it's about giving them that new push for growth. The other area that I'm deeply involved in is the Company of Women, and that's a group of female entrepreneurs, around 300 of them at the moment are direct members. The reach of them is much wider than that. And what we do is provide network and training opportunities for female entrepreneurs to grow and to actually network with other people so that they can explore the journey that they've been on and try and find solutions.
It's a wonderful challenge of creativity. It's a chance to really extend your personal character in a way that you really don't normally. It doesn't normally happen in a more traditional business environment. It's a wonderful chance to really stretch yourself with something that you really believe in. So for me, in everything I've done in entrepreneurship has always been about something I've been absolutely passionate about and really cared about. And I think there's a lot of evidence that that's really necessary, not least because being an entrepreneur is incredibly tough and very, very demanding, much more demanding than anything else that I have ever done in business, and both more fun and more challenging, certainly more stressful, very volatile, but at the same time just a huge blast and so enjoyable in so many ways.
Fascinating experiences, often tough, and in turn, I'd always rather do a turnaround or a fix-up or a start-up than go into an organisation that's growing 5% a year, because that's how you learn. And I say to people all the time, there are bad experiences, but there's no such thing as bad experience. In other words, if you get in there and the going's tough and you feel like you're pushing against it all the time, the experience you're getting for your career going forward is positive, and that's how I've treated it. I think the most important characteristic in an entrepreneur, firstly, is have they got an idea that is easy to communicate to other people? Because there's plenty of great ideas that have fallen over because of communication skills. There's plenty of people out there calling themselves entrepreneurs who actually haven't got there. So part of it is staying power, because this stuff's not easy. If it was easy, there'd be a lot of people calling themselves entrepreneurs. So you've got a great idea, you've got to stick with it, you've got to get that idea into a method and a form that is easy to communicate to people and easy to get excited about, and then you've got to see it through and make it happen. And so an entrepreneur is somebody who, in my view, has done all of that. Does that mean that everyone is a screaming success? No. The majority of them will fall over at some point, but you've got to go like mad until that point.
You believe in, you have to take risks, you have to spend money to invest in yourself. Don't take shortcuts. Creativity to me is about delivering value back to businesses. There is nothing more that I like when I hear a story from our clients saying, well, we got a 45% lift, or we've grown 8 times in the market since the rebrand. And I think you're going to find a lot of this next generation are going to pop up from these small communities doing really interesting things. And that really excites me. I think it's really exciting. I think this student base at AUT, this next year and the few years following, of course, there's so much opportunity for them. And I think there's always room for new young businesses like that to always start. So I encourage all of these students that I might be speaking to right now to just, back yourselves and do it, Take the risk. It's only money, You'll never know if you don't try. And banding around, what do we think about this? Should we do this, Communication's really key. I think too many people hide behind email. And I say that to even my own staff in this office. I mean, look at this office, Get up and walk around, I mean, obviously you have to email the things that have come in from a client that you need to forward, but communicate. There is nothing greater than conversation.
I think most senior business people and entrepreneurs you talk to talk about taking very measured, calculated risks. I think it's easy to think that risk and reward. Risk means a casino type risk. And the successful people take very measured risks. They really work out what their downside is. There's a property magnate turned president who said if you look after the downside, the upside takes care of itself. And I think there's a lot in that.
I think the trick to entrepreneurship is to starting. You know, I think we have so many great ideas that we all come up with through different mechanisms, but they're literally just that. So starting, I think we can overdo it, right, with plans and strategy, and sometimes, you know, just getting an idea and getting it going, talking to some clients and getting it sort of the seeds of it, and then you can start building a lot of those tools that you're building in your toolbox. But unless you actually start to see it, sometimes it's the biggest trick. You know, if I sit on the board of the Ice House, right, so we get to look at all these little startups that come through, and you try and figure out what's your secret sauce on one versus the other, and it's just so diverse, isn't it? Some's come up with a cool little idea, some's dad was a boss, some just didn't want to go to university, so they're going to try something, all these little things, and they all sort of become this entrepreneur, whatever that actually means. It just means they've got a passion and a dream, and they're having a crack at getting it funded and going.
I think someone who's not afraid of hard work. Doing your own thing requires a significant amount of hard work. It takes a significant amount of dedication, and I think more so than working in the corporate, because corporate you can, when it's your business and it's your idea and you're trying to grow it, you have to have that commitment that you're going to work it through to the end. And I think that's what I would look at. And people who I think really do think outside the square, you know, really thinking of different things. You know, I'm constantly being criticised for looking at the next thing. You know, it's just always looking at an opportunity and talking to people about opportunities. I think that, to me, is what an entrepreneur is about. Because not every idea is a good idea, as I'm told regularly. But we've had a few good ones, and they've come to fruition. So I think, you know, that different levels of entrepreneurship. The real innovator is an innovator, and they will always be trying to innovate and trying to make a new product come to life. But as a business, it's hard work, so you need that commitment, desire, and drive. Well, I look at two of the latest success stories within the New Zealand entrepreneur sort of environment culture is Sistema, 660 million, 20 years he was in business, started in his garage. And then it's the family from the Hawke's Bay that did the fill up 100 water balloons, and you know, they went to China again, started in their garage, they went to Hong Kong, lived in an apartment, worked it through, and they had the commitment and the desire to keep pushing. And now you look at them and they've got so many, you know, they've done extremely well for themselves. But they had the desire, they had the commitment, and they knew the idea was great. Now, I'm sure that there were some people on the way through that didn't say it was great and told them that they had rocks in their head and they shouldn't keep going. So there's a certain amount of resilience in what you need to do as well. But at some point, you've got to say how many people are saying it's a bad idea and how many people are saying it's a good idea. But they're great success stories amongst many. I said NZTE, I think, would be absolutely your first port of call, because they'll be able to steer you, potentially to investors within that country, because that's one of the things they do, and they can also steer you in the right direction for people who you can get advice from. You know, there's lots of them around that have done export to certain countries and wherever that may be. So that would be, personally, that would be my first port of call, and ask around to see who you might find that you know somebody who, you know, they know somebody who's done that. So, because sometimes it is just that conversation to bounce the idea off someone. But certainly NZT, that would be my first point of call to go to, really. We all know people. You knocked it on the head. 2 degrees of separation, and I think New Zealanders are accepting to giving advice. You know, someone knocks on your door and says, "Can I come and have a chat? I've got an idea." Most people will say, "Absolutely, come on in." I did it myself. You know, when I was, looking at starting up a business a few years ago, and I wanted to get some advice. So I went to a successful businessman, and he sat down and with Rachel and myself, and we had a cup of tea and chewed the fat, and he sort of said, "Think of this, think of that, go forth and conquer." And it wasn't all positive. There was a bit of watch for this and you sure about that? But, didn't really know the person, but knew a person who knew them, and they made the intro. And so I think asking around is especially within New Zealand, and people are willing to help. It's a big difference when you're asking for investment. There's a lot more work to be done in what you need to present, but people are happy to sit down and give you some advice on what you should and shouldn't do, and the pitfalls of where you may be going. I think this is the New Zealand way. When you are doing a startup business, is working in it, and you've got to be able to extract yourself out at some point, and that's going to be part of your business plan, to say, at this point of the business cycle, whether it be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the timeline is that you've factored in, you have to pull yourself out of it to work on it, not in it. And too many people get caught up in that I work in it, and then you'll completely hamstring yourself, and the business will never grow, because it'll all become about you. And it's such an important thing. You have to do the hard work to start, because you can't afford to pay people, but you've got to factor it in at some point. You've got to bring those people in. Don't underestimate the time and effort it will take to bring anything to life. And you've got to make sure that you factor in what the financials are going to be and how much it's going to cost you. And that's why I think a lot of small businesses fail in New Zealand, is because they don't truly factor in what the financial cost is going to be. And we all need money to live. And I think it gets to a stage where people go, I don't make enough money out of this, I've got to go on, because I've got to pay the rent, I've got to pay the bills, I've got to pay. And they didn't say it's actually going to take 12 months to make money, because you lose, doesn't matter what it is, you generally lose money in the first 6 months, because you've got a whole lot of startup costs, you've got a whole lot of different things. So you've just got to factor that in of, where do I get my income? How do I live when you're doing that, that business case on a new product or whatever it might be. And that'll give you, I believe, more opportunity to succeed. And around, where do I get some? How am I going to live? Do I live at home with mum and dad for the first 12 months? Or am I flatting with certain people? Or I'll do a second job that gives me some money, whatever it might be. And that's the hard work, and that's the commitment piece. You've got to live. Everyone needs to put food on the table, and I think sometimes people forget that.